Hello, welcome back to the studio. Today I'm painting pastel seas. I've got myself a cup of tea, so I'm all set. See you in a moment. I got some of my Seascape White and I've added a little bit of my linseed oil to it. I just want to thin this down enough to make it into a nice cream consistency. Enough paint there to actually stick. Roll my brush through it and I'm going to literally touch it on. This will stick and it will show up as a nice bright highlight. Further back here in the direction of the light, that little wave there needs a few little sparkles as well. Keep it small, it's further back, and even some of these waves here can even take a little speckle. Again, Seascape White, not totally pure. I also want to add a little bit more detail down here on the foreground. I finished this off with a knife and now I'm switched to a liner brush, long thin brush. I'm just going to roll my brush through this paint, draw it to a fine point. I just want to increase some of the brightness here. Now remember, this wave is sort of casting a bit of a shadow, but there's this transparency, so it'll shine through, highlight this part of the wave. And don't forget, follow the shape of the wave. Most important that you follow the shape of the wave. It's a windy day here today and all the wind chimes outside are rattling and squeaking, so it's all the background noise you can hear. So I'm just going to build that up. Increase the intensity of light here on the wave. And again, I use my little finger to anchor my hand, so I just touch it to the canvas. It acts like a little tripod. Now, rather than have you sit there for hours on end, I'm going to do this as a bit of a time lapse. I'm going to speed this section up, but I'm going to film it and you can see how my painting develops. I'm just mixing up a little bit of pale lavender colour. I used a very bright white colour in here with a little bit of yellow into it, that Seascape White colour. But up in here in the translucent area, I just want to put in the suggestion of a few little shadows up in here. So just increase the intensity of the shadow lines across here. And I'm just going to use a pale lavender colour to do it, nothing too strong. So just follow that round, follow the shape. This could be a little bit sort of seaweed caught in the water. Don't overdo it too much though. It could end up looking very messy and you can just overdo it slightly. So just, and I'll show you a neat little trick in a minute. If you do overdo it, I can show you a neat way of actually calming this all down. So I'll overdo it a little bit just to show you the effect I'm looking for. So let's put in a few too many. Let's put in a few too many of these. So maybe just put in another couple here. So maybe I've just overdone it slightly. And here's a neat trick. Whilst it's still wet, get a clean, dry fan brush. Make sure it's good and dry. There's nothing on it, so make sure it's really nice and dry. And you can just gently overstroke this, and very, very light pressure. Just going to push this down into the water slightly. And as you go back over that, you can soften it back into the background. That just takes the sharpness off that. The painting underneath is a little dry. So you can do this without everything becoming too blended together. But that's something you can only really do once the painting's had a few days to dry. I'm not going to touch this area down here. I'm pleased with it. But I'm going to add a few little details on the beach here. Maybe a few little rocks and pebbles. I've got a small amount of the Van Dyke brown here. And a little bit more of that linseed oil. It's a little bit too strong for my painting. It's a bit too dark. So I'm going to use a little bit of my Seascape White just to soften this down. I still want brown, but just not as strong. And think about how these little pebbles are sort of sitting in the sand. So think about them being little rounded lumps and bumps. And I'll probably add a little bit of foam around them to settle them down into the beach a little bit more. Here's a nice little bit. got a little bit of a curl round there, and maybe there's a little rock sitting right there, and the wave just parted round it. So there's a little bit of a happy accident there, just to hook it round that little rock. And look out for these little sorts of defects on your beach. There's another one, a little bit of an area where we could sneak a little stone in. Try not to make your stones all too even in terms of their sizes and shapes. So go back and adjust them slightly to make them look a little bit more natural. So they look like twins. It can be a little bit off-putting sometimes. I brush a quick wash, then back into some nice Seascape White. Maybe just a couple of little highlights here and there. Then I'm going to sneak back in with the palette knife. Pull that down. This time I'm going to get the edge of the knife. I'm just going to rub it into a tiny little bit of white, just a tiny little bit, and just touch and slide it along. Adding those little touches of light base the stones. With that, I think we've got a finished painting. A bit big with that one. Just get my palette knife in there and just straighten that out. There we go. I just linked those two together there. Nice little save. With the final touch, I'm going to just add a little bit of linseed oil, some of my red, roll my liner brush through it. I'm going to sign my painting. And my little bird sitting above. I hope you've enjoyed this. And you could sit and play with this for hours, but I'm going to call it finished now. And maybe later on I'll come back and have another tinker with it. But this is a nice example of a seascape which is not too complicated. Okay, 3, 2, 1. If you've enjoyed watching me paint pastel seas, then give me a thumbs up. Subscribe, like, share the video with friends and family. It all goes to support the channel. Any comments you leave, I'll do my best to answer. Until the next time we paint, happy painting, people. Time for tea.